Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome to Giles and the Goalie Podcast. I am Giles Farrell. Find me on Twitter at Giles Farrell. Across from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Find him on Twitter at Ben Remington. This is the Giles and the Goalie Podcast, as I said. Don't know why we needed to repeat that for second time in 30 seconds.
People get lost sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes we just have to find our way. Ben, I was wondering this week on Twitter who had a colder week outside of the Twin Cities than Peter Chiarelli after he was fired or the Minnesota Twins after their two baseball operations had basically said they were done spending money. Who had a worse week on Twitter?
Well,
Yeah, it's tough. I was thinking about it on the way here. I couldn't find a good answer.
not that I'm here to defend the Twins front
Ooh, here
office
we
or
go.
anything, but I don't know. I think the whole budget thing with the Twins is a very fickle beast, and I think just expecting them to blow the wad because the Pohlads are billionaires, I think Okay, so here's the difference. Expectation wise, like Twins fans at this point, we've been under Pohlad rule for what, 30 years now? Just under
84 he bought them. So
40. Yeah, almost 40 years. 35. So anyway, you shouldn't expect this. Like, why do you expect that they're going to spend suddenly? I don't understand. Like, that's the silly thing to me. People just going ballistic about this team not spending money like it's some kind of new thing for them to not spend money. I get it. We paid for half of Target Field, and people think that was some kind of like that they signed some kind of blood oath to spend more money because they got Target Field. That was never written anywhere. Like they said they needed it to compete, and I believe that from a financial standpoint, because if they were in the Dome still, they would even be able to spend even less money. So I don't know. It's just silly to me. Like, it's just, I don't know what people should expect. It doesn't make any sense. And then conversely, the Oilers, like that. If I'm an Oilers fan, this move came what?
long overdue.
Yeah, 5 years too late. How long's he been there? 3 years?
No.
4 years? He got hired when we were still podcasting.
Correct.
So, yeah, 4 years. So, yeah, he's done far more damage. Let's be honest. The Twins aren't going to win a World Series anytime soon unless things drastically change. The Oilers, meanwhile, have one of the very, very key ingredients to winning a Stanley Cup, and that is a generational superstar. Quite honestly, probably the best player in the game. Like, I don't think you can even. It's debatable, but I don't know that it's debatable by much. And he's squandered that, and so it's like, Twins fans, I think, can be upset, and that's fine, even though I think it's a little misguided. Oilers fans have every right in the world to be just absolutely livid about what Peter Chiarelli did to that team.
I am going to say that Peter Chiarelli had a worse week on Twitter, even though the Twins always are good for getting everybody riled up on payroll. But
Right.
It's so close, though. But, yeah, Peter Chiarelli just basically everyone was dissecting every one of his moves one by one on Twitter. And
They all sucked.
it was like watching the Frank Grimes funeral on The Simpsons, where it's just a joke. And Homer's just sleeping, and then he just shouts out, "Change the channel, Marge." Like, that's what it was like watching Peter Chiarelli's moves be dissected on Twitter. But I was thinking about that on the way here, so I felt compelled to ask, because the Twins also were taken in the teeth, at least for me, because of their jerseys that they unveiled.
I'm way more pissed about that than I am about the payroll.
I'm violently upset, especially considering what they replaced.
Oh, I know. Those creams were so nice. Such a nice jersey. Such a good, homage throwback kind of piece. And good beyond that. Like, they weren't good because they were a throwback, because I don't remember them wearing those jerseys. I wasn't, I'm not 60 years old. But yeah, those blue jerseys, like, woof. Shoehorning in more yellow into the team's color palette is just not a thing for me.
Nope. Don't do that. Don't do that, folks. Stay away from Casota Gold at all costs.
I like Parker Hagman, the Twins Daily, one of the Twins Daily founders, demanded that the Twins wear Casota Gold pants with these blue jerseys, and if you're gonna do it, just go for it, right? Like, just absolutely.
The Padres tried like yellow pants one time.
Right.
Like, why not?
Pea pants, go for it.
Anyway, that we can probably save that later for our jersey segment. Although we're going to talk about All-Star jerseys later on. That will also be our video segment as well on our YouTube or Facebook channel. So look for that. But anyway, the Minnesota Wild having just a short week after we last recorded.
Yeah, one game.
What a game. As Ben and I recover from Las Vegas.
Have you recovered yet?
I have. I worked my way painfully through an article this morning. That was my first since returning from Vegas.
Sure.
And it was just it was like my first day of work. You're just grinding through it painfully. And then finally you reach the conclusion in the hopes that the next one is going to be a lot better. And it will be. But that's how I felt. I am recovered.
Yeah.
But no, that was a funner podcast from Las Vegas. He says, questionably.
Question mark?
As we got the first 15 minutes in pre-hockey game, and then the last 45 in post-hockey game and buffet. So
yes,
there you go.
A tremendous buffet at that.
It was. But the Wild, after that game in Vegas that we talked about, they go to Colorado. They get a big win, 5-2 over the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah,
a kind of a defensive clinic the Minnesota Wild put on in the third period. As you can read on ZoneCoverage.com on Monday, did another little video segment kind of dissecting how the Wild shut the Avs down defensively in the third period. And then there's a little bit of a gap between kind of the segments, which basically was the area that the Wild were on, like an extended power play. They went power play, 5-on-3 power play. That cut like 4 minutes out of the period,
right,
where the Avs did nothing. But essentially in that game, the Wild they fall behind first 1-0, and then again 2-1. They kind of went back and forth with Colorado, and then they were able to kind of put their foot to the pedal, per se. As Jared Spurgeon ties it, Eric Stahl gives them the lead. Charlie Coyle, the big omelet, makes it 4-2 with 23 seconds to play in the period. And then Ryan Suter adds another power play goal in the third period to give the Wild 5-2 win over Colorado, separating them now 3 points in the Central Division, which a couple weeks ago you probably thought was unheard of, that one, the Wild would catch, and then two, would be 3 points ahead of the Colorado Avalanche at the All-Star break. But as I alluded to in the pregame video, the Avs had been really struggling. Goaltending had been awful. Neither goaltender had a save percentage anywhere close to 900 in the last month. And they got Philip Grubauer, who was the worst of their two goaltenders. And basically I said the Wild have to make this guy win the game for them. Mm-hmm. And they got, I think it was like 28 shots on goal, and 5 of them got by. So they did a pretty marvelous job of making sure they got some good looks on the net. And then, of course, quality defense. And the Avs only had 5 shots in the third period. And the fact that they had none of them come anywhere close to the high danger area of the offensive zone,
right,
especially considering they have probably the best line in hockey.
Yeah.
with Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen
All 3 All-Stars.
was incredible. That line only had 2 shots on goal in the third period.
Wow.
So a job well done defensively for the Wild, and that took them right into the All-Star break,
Yeah.
which you don't really have much to talk about because Minnesota Wild don't exactly make national headlines, nor does Devin Dubnyk exactly fire off quotes into the internet that have really any talking points to them. So
Right.
at the All-Star break, your Minnesota Wild, again, 3rd in the Central Division. 3rd. They were out of a playoff spot not too long ago. They trail the Nashville Predators and Winnipeg Jets tied with 64 points. What do you think of the Wild here at the All-Star break, especially in the last week, after they kind of made some altering moves to their roster?
Yeah.
They get 2 big wins over Vegas and Colorado to go into the break, and then
Right.
they get a nice bit of time off here as they don't play again until
Thursday.
Friday.
Oh, Friday.
In
That's right,
Dallas.
yeah. Yeah, it's weird. The timing of it is weird because, we kind of railroaded that Nino trade last week, and probably rightfully so. But with the full realization that it wasn't going to change this team a ton, like, it's a bad move, and I think everyone, most people can agree it was a bad move and it was a bad trade. But it ultimately didn't affect this team a whole lot. We'll see in the long run, I guess. But it's interesting. I mean, they're on a 3-game winning streak, and I don't know. To me, it's this 3-game winning streak, and maybe they'll extend that. Who knows? But coming off of a patented swoon, and some struggles after the swoon, like they got out of the swoon, they won a couple of games here and there. They were punching Judy, and then they kind of struggled a little bit more. Damn near started another swoon. But it's kind of more of the same for me, like that's what this team is year in and year out. Like it's the perpetual roller coaster that the Wild are. It's just kind of, they'll in all likelihood maybe end up in a playoff spot, probably a wild card spot. Who knows? Maybe higher. Maybe they'll end up 3rd. I mean, that's what they did last season, and look how that turned out. So it's just more of the same, and I'm not shocked either way. I'm really not. I'm not getting my hopes up over this 3-game winning streak. I'm not super, super down on them guaranteeing they'll miss the playoffs because of the struggles they had before the winning streak, especially against bad teams. It's just more of the same. It's just the same. It's Batman Forever. Again.
You're making me want to go home and watch that.
It's fair.
So I'm a little more optimistic, especially considering you look at the Wild schedule coming out of the All-Star break. They have at Dallas, home Chicago, at Buffalo, who is in a bit of a slump right now.
But they're pretty good otherwise.
Edmonton, home. At New Jersey, who is bottom of the Metropolitan Division. At the Islanders, who are
somehow at the top of the Metropolitan Division.
They're surprisingly good this year.
Yeah.
Must be a coaching thing. Wonder why the Capitals let Barry Trotz go. But I digress.
Yeah, how much of a shoo-in is he for Jack Adams if they make the playoffs? Holy crap.
Then they have the Flyers at home, the Devils at home, and then the Blues at home. And then they have the Ducks at home to end the homestand. But, I mean, the schedule... Oh, I'm sorry. Then they go to New York, the Rangers, and then to Detroit, then the Blues again. There's so many winnable games in there.
Well...
Like, we can sit here and talk about how somehow that's going to fall off the rails. But if you take care of business... You can put a lot of points on the board in that stretch, and then you get confidence going into a stretch where you play at Winnipeg, at Calgary, Nashville back-to-back, home and home, Tampa Bay. That is going to be an incredibly tough stretch, but that's at the end of February and into March, which we have a long ways. But the point of it is you have a very winnable stretch of hockey games coming up that you have to take advantage of because you're still only 3 points up on the Avalanche.
Yeah.
You're only 3 points up out of a playoff spot. So continuing to put points on the board is essential, and you have this stretch of, 13 games that you should be winning, 10 of.
Right.
Good teams win 10 out of those 13 games in there because there's not many good teams in there. So you got to do that.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think this is the time for them to make hay, and they really need to kind of pad or God forbid they make a jump to second place in the division,
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, this is the time for them to build that. We always talked about the swoon cushion, and maybe they built a little bit for that themselves earlier this season because they survived the swoon and now they're back in a playoff spot in the division, no less. So maybe this is the time where they build a playoff cushion. This is the time where they build up a little bit of, a point lead on the teams trailing them in the wild card. And that way they're able to maybe survive some struggles in March as we've seen them do before. Because it's a very real possibility. I mean, Devin Dubnyk is, talk about a roller coaster. Devin Dubnyk is a roller coaster from month to month. So if he's playing pretty well right now, which I feel like he's playing well enough right now. He hasn't been terrible. I feel like he's playing well enough. But, very entirely possible that he falls off and they have a really poor month of March. So now is the time where you get those points that you're going to need in March.
Devin Dubnyk with a .916 save percentage in January, 7-2-0 in his 10 games played.
That's actually more mediocre than I thought it would be, but that's not bad. I mean,
No.
that's literally, I think literally NHL average.
Right.
Right, in the 9 teens is usually
Might be slightly above because
a tad.
the average is a little bit lower this year.
Sure. So yeah, it's a tad above average, but not, again, I think he's been inconsistent even within weeks, lately, where he'll have a bad game and then he'll have a really good game, and that's not something you usually saw to him kind of stringing together.
Right. No, and essentially as he goes, the Wild do go. I mean, it's not. There's been no change in that since he showed up 4 years ago.
Right.
Did you like his All-Star game performance?
It was an All-Star game. This is the first All-Star game I've watched in probably a decade, but he looked great in the first game against the Pacific. I think he was phenomenal, and he was certainly tested. And that was the only thing that carried over to the second game, or the final game. He was very much tested. I mean, I think the Metropolitan just absolutely owned the Central in that first period. They absolutely destroyed. I mean, I don't know if Henrik Lundqvist faced a shot. Did he? If he did, it was nothing doing. It wasn't very good. So I think he kind of ran out of steam a little bit. I think also not a whole lot of defenses played in these 3-on-3 games. So I don't know if there's a whole lot you can take out of it. I mean, he was certainly playing out of his mind in the first game, and that was obvious. But in the second game, I don't know that there was a whole lot of savable shots that he could have. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's the All-Star game. You can't take anything away from the All-Star game, I feel like. It's just such a gimmick.
But we all watch it.
Well, I mean, I watched
fun.
it because I was actually home for once.
True. You were
Which
also feeling ill.
Yeah, no, and I'm feeling a touch better today, but I missed the meltdown, as did you, and we're both very sad about that.
Yeah, never fun to miss our favorite January event, the Twins Daily Winter Meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I enjoy the All-Star game. Every year people bellyache about it and how it should just go away and blah blah blah, and then the same people who complain about it end up watching it, and then it's just like, and I'm not calling you out, but. Because you actually don't watch it. You had like a special thing this year where you ended up being in front of a TV.
Right.
So, but just accept it. Like, don't bellyache. Like, I don't bellyache about it. Like, I actually think it's fun to watch. So I know I'm out there on my own island, I enjoy the 3-on-3 tournament. That was probably one of the smarter things the NHL did in the last few years.
You think
was
so?
switch to that.
Yeah.
It's 3-on-3 is just a lot more creative hockey. When you put the best players in the world out there with each other, 3-on-3, like, sure. I mean, you might as well just get rid of the goaltenders and just put like some smaller
kidding,
nets
right?
out there.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? Like, naming goaltenders the All-Star game is great, but there's no goaltending in the game, so and there's no defense. So why bother and why risk, crushing a team's goaltender? Don't DiPietro yourself. I thought Fleury did in the skills competition on Friday night. He made a split save. I forget who it was on in the shootout, and then he's kind of got up slowly, and I was just like, did this dude just DiPietro himself? But he didn't.
That'd be bad.
He got up. That was actually fun because the goalies had to make saves and
the
save streak.
Yeah, that was fun.
And then Fleury lost the save streak. I think it was on he needed one more, and then he he got scored on. Then he throws a stick and it hits the camera guy right in the shin. How painful must that have been?
Sure didn't feel good.
No, but the point of it is, if you're going to complain about the All-Star game, don't watch it. I don't complain about it because I know I'm going to watch it, and I weirdly enjoy it. So take that and shove it.
I will continue to complain about it because I will continue to not watch it.
Right. So you're valid. You don't watch it. So even though this year you did, but again, you're exempt.
I made an this year was the exception that proves the rule.
Neither of us was supposed to be watching it. We
True.
were supposed to be
Heavily
at
intoxicated.
which
in downtown Minneapolis.
I'm weirdly okay with maybe missing this year after the previous weekend where we had plenty of beer. So that's maybe that was just a small blessing that I ended up not being able to go. So, but anyway, so the other newsworthy thing from the week here is the Minnesota Wild claimed a defenseman off the waiver wire, another depth defenseman, and I have to get the release to read his name right. Defenseman Anthony Bethato.
Bieto?
I don't know. The pronunciation says the toe.
Oh.
We'll see.
I thought it was Bieto. All right.
Let's let Tony Pants spell it out for us on Friday.
Oh, yeah, sure. That'll help.
Or whatever channel you chose to watch the Wild on.
We'll get into that.
But he, 28-year-old defenseman from the Nashville Predators. This season, 3 assists, 23 block shots, 40 hits in 18 games. This season was a 2010 sixth-round draft pick of the Nashville Predators, so familiarity there with Paul Fenton, former assistant general manager and head of the draft table. Mm-hmm. I sat there and just stared at Twitter for roughly an hour after this move came in. I didn't get it. This put the Wild at kind of the max roster limit as they sent Joel Eriksson Ek and Luke Cunnin back to Iowa for the weekend.
Yeah.
Just to give them some reps or whatever you want. But
sure.
This guy's like another defenseman. He's a 7th, 8th defenseman. You have how many defensemen already? Are you just bringing in this guy just to incite more fear into your roster that you can get moved? Is there another move coming? Where is this going? We don't know. Why did we sign him? We don't know.
Yeah, and so that kind of raised a bunch of questions, and the fact that he's in their left-hander is just bizarre to me because they're already short a right-hander, and so they're adding yet another left-hander to the pool. So right now they have, what would it be, 5? Yeah, 5 left-handed defensemen on the roster. Yeah, and then 2 healthy right-handers on the roster, and that's it. And it's like, yeah, I'm with you. What are you doing? I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I don't,
I can see this move if Nick Seeler isn't playing well, but he is. He's doing just fine on the back end, as referenced by a Wednesday night game in Colorado where he blocked roughly 50 shots in 10 seconds.
Oh, no, sorry. They have 3 right-handers. I just thought of it. They do still have Prosser.
So,
but still.
It's are you just going to jettison Nate Prosser? Are you done with him?
Yeah.
Are you going to trade him to Philadelphia? for the Chuck Fletcher lifeline.
Grits.
Right. And I don't know. I having more depth is fine, but this is just kind of a head scratching move where you're just picking up another gritty type of defenseman on the left side, which you already have. So
yeah. Well, and Nick Seeler's playing pretty well.
Yeah.
For a third pair defenseman, he's all right.
Younger and
you could do a
less
lot
expensive.
worse than him. Obviously, you've got Suter and Brodin pretty entrenched in the top 4. I don't get it. We didn't really understand. I mean, the Brad Hunt trade, we're like, okay, whatever. Like, you didn't pay much for him. You got some depth. That's fine. Whatever. Not upset about it. With this, you're like, yeah, like, okay, you already got that guy. Like, especially doing it days apart, I think is very confusing because it's like, why do you need to, why are we clamoring to scoop up all the left-handed defensemen we can find? Like, those aren't scarce. Like there's so many left-handed defenders out there. Right-handers are the ones that are scarce, and you're gobbling up all the left-handers like there's some kind of drought coming or something. I don't get it. And so that led to a lot of Jonas Brodin trade rumors. I haven't seen anything substantiated. I haven't seen any teams linked. I haven't seen any players linked. Have you seen any of that?
No.
I mean, I don't follow a ton of folks who would talk about that stuff on Twitter, but it just kind of led people to think like, hey, maybe Brodin's out the door. That Fenton's obviously comfortable enough right now to shake things up. Maybe that's the next logical move. So I don't know. It just seems to me like there's probably another move coming, but that's kind of scary too. Because like, as much as I'm not a huge fan of Jonas Brodin, I think he's good for what he is. I think he's useful for what he is, and sure, he doesn't really contribute on offense, but he's pretty rock solid defensively on that second pair. And I think him and Dumba have kind of worked out whatever issues they had to where they mesh fairly well together at this point. And him and Spurge, I mean, everybody plays great with Spurge, but I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird to me. I'm sure it's probably that weird to you too.
I don't understand why at this juncture you want to suddenly jettison Brodin. Like, I feel like that's a move you have to make in the off season.
Yeah.
And as I referenced in my article on Zone Coverage on Monday, the Wild have to continue to play shutdown defense like they did in the third against Colorado to win games going forward. This team is not scoring goals greatly at this point. They're in the bottom third of the league in goals. And so this is how you're going to have to win games. You need defense and goaltending. You need somebody to score a goal at some point. But
that's
the Wild's bread and butter
supply.
has to be their defense and their goaltending, which Devin Dubnyk playing much better right now. And then the Wild defense, they have to play just like they did against the Avs.
Yeah.
Like more games than none for them to continue to rack up points again in the playoffs again. And jettisoning Brodin for whatever Paul Fenton is thinking of bringing back in would just be kind of another shock to the system, which I just don't think at this juncture is correct, because you're taking a very good defensive defenseman out of your system and you're going to essentially try to have somebody else replace him who is probably not going to be as good defensively.
Right. And Seeler is solid and strong. We talked about how much we like Nick Seeler. But Nick Seeler isn't as reliable as Jonas Brodin. I don't think anybody can really argue that. I mean, Nick Seeler maybe brings different things to the table. I think he's slightly more offensively inclined than Jonas Brodin, which is a pretty low bar to clear. But
right.
I mean, moving Seeler up into the top 4, not the worst thing in the world if you have to, due to injury or whatever, like we saw in the playoffs last year. But to your point, I mean, you are weakening your top 4. You're weakening your top 4 defensively, and unless you're going to get something back that makes our socks go up and down, I don't know why you do it. I mean, if it's just if you're just jettisoning him to make an example of him like you apparently did with Nino, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And I'm not against kind of moving some of the core pieces. I think that's kind of something that has to be done. I guess at this point, Like, what is your objective? That's what I wonder. If you move Brody now, then I wonder, what is your objective of this season? Is it just do whatever to shake up the roster, and if you make it into the playoffs, that's a bonus? Like,
yeah, I'm with you.
In his Q&A with Russo this last week, Paul Fenton essentially said, whatever, I think is best for the team, Craig thinks what's best, referencing Craig Leopold. What happened to, we just need to make tweaks and we can still be a contender. All of a sudden now, yeah, whatever I decide, Craig's fine with. Seems to be a sharp change in philosophy. So now I wonder, what is the objective here for this season? Because if the objective just is whatever, then I got to think that all but says Eric Stahl is going to be moved before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to move Jonas Brodin at this point, yeah, that probably signals Eric Stahl is probably going to get moved for whatever you can get in return, and he's playing really well, so you can probably fetch a pretty decent return on a rental center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hansel. This is what I've wondered here over the break is, what do the Wild want to do? They're in a good spot right now. They're not, totally secure in that spot, but they're, like I said earlier, they're 3 points up on a playoff spot. They're third in the division. I just don't know. That's kind of the golden question now is, how many more pieces are going to get moved before the season runs out? And, obviously, as we said, jettisoning Jonas Brodin kind of shakes up a defense that you really need to play well if you do want to get into the playoffs. That's if you do want to get in the playoffs.
I feel like, to your point, Fenton is playing like this game where he's trying to get rid of enough talent off the team to kind of turn things over a little bit, but at the same time, like, still make the playoffs somehow to keep Leopold happy. So he's like playing like talent Jenga, where he's just like removing blocks and hoping that the whole thing doesn't collapse on him. He's playing talent Jenga with this roster, just hoping that it doesn't come crashing down. And
But at this point, like, you move enough of these pieces in hopes that Jenga doesn't come crashing down. Like, does Craig Leopold really, see it, a lot of dollars just from 2 extra home playoff games?
Fair. It's a fair
like,
point.
does he get all tingly feeling inside when he just thinks about 2 extra playoff games as opposed to, a longer playoff run?
Sure.
I don't know. That's not obviously what he wants. He wants longer playoff success, but
Sure.
That's kind of what I've wondered here with these moves and these rumors that have kind of cropped up here in the last week. And I still think this next kind of stretch against these winnable teams that we're seeing, could probably say a lot to what maybe could come before the trade deadline at the end of the month. If the Wild kind of flounder like we maybe alluded to and we've seen them do before in that stretch where you should win 10 out of 13, then yeah, he probably pulls the trigger on another move.
Yeah. No,
And it might not be great, but as you said last week on Zone Coverage, the Wild need to be winning trades, not taking massive L's.
Yeah. Yeah, and he even said that much in that Q&A. He basically said the next, 10 to 20 games was going to decide the rest of the season for him. I feel like if they're out of it at all, which it doesn't maybe appear like they would be in a month's time, that all but guaranteed him dealing guys like Stahl or other folks with only a year left on their contract. But I don't know. It's in such a weird spot right now that I don't know that you can. I mean, he's going to have to make more hockey trades, right? Like, he's going to have to make more player-for-player trades in order to get this team where it needs to go. But I don't know. My confidence is totally shot by the Nino trade. Like, I don't. Like, after the Aberg trade, I'm like, hey, that's not bad. Like, the Ducks are dumb. Way to take advantage of that. We all love Justin Kloos, but I don't know that he's, he was going to get any kind of shot here. And you're probably better off with Pontus Aberg. But then the Nino trade happens. It's like, what? Like, why? what is the purpose of this trade? And we've debated that for the last, week plus. I don't think any of us are any closer to understanding it. And there's been all sorts of theories thrown out there, and some of them kind of make sense as to why he would do it, but it still doesn't make it a good idea. It just comes back to there not being really any kind of good reason to make that trade. And so that's where I'm at with him. Like, I don't trust him to make player-for-player trades because, albeit, you're talking basically two third-line-ish type guys, right? Like Nino and Rask. But the disparity between them is so great that it feels almost like a, Hall for Larson type trade. Like, that's how it feels to a lot of Wild fans. Like, it feels like a Subban for Weber trade where you're like, what are they thinking? Again, granted, we're dealing with third line type guys here. But then, Nino goes on a tear immediately afterwards for the Hurricanes, and it's like, well, there you go. Meanwhile, Rask is like he's defending in quicksand, and it kind of reaffirms everything we thought and makes me even more unsure.
Yeah, sure. Nino leaves and he just goes on a goal-scoring tear. Perhaps he was the one who just needed the change of scenery, not Rask. I think the ship has sailed on him. Well, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't
Although,
know. It's tough to say.
Just do this. Watch a Victor Rask. Just take a period. Put your phone away. Put your computer away. Just have the TV on.
Yeah.
Just watch Rask every time he's on the ice, and just notice how when the play is rushing to one end, he just can't keep up on the screen.
Yeah.
Just
he's
watch.
Very slow.
It'll make you want to hurl.
Yeah, I really like doing that, and that's something that maybe isn't talked about enough is how to watch hockey. I really like doing and we see it a lot with draft prospects where they do a shift by shift game, where you basically just follow that guy around the entire game. Like, you just follow him with your eyes, and it gives you a real idea as to what type of player this guy is. I really like doing that, and especially with guys that are recently acquired or recently in the news, or you think they might be hurt or whatever. I really like following them around like that, and I've done that a little bit with Rask. Certainly, it's tough to do for the entire game, but once he jumps the boards for a shift, you kind of maybe you catch his number out of your eye, and you just kind of follow him, like you said. You just follow him around. Yep, you just follow him around and kind of see what he's doing. And yeah, I've done that a handful of times with Rask, and again, I don't claim to be a scout. I don't claim to be a high-level hockey executive, but I'm just not impressed with what I see.
So, kind of moving along here. This was like a week and a half ago. I missed this in our Vegas show for many reasons, but and it would have been fitting at the second part of the show. But a week and a half ago, the Minnesota Wild put out an event on their social media channels where Zach Parise is hosting Whiskey and Wine. So that got me wondering, what does a Minnesota Wild whiskey taste like? And so I came up with a few ideas. I don't know if you did or not. I'm sure you have a few ideas, but yeah. I'll give you maybe time to generate one or two in your mind.
Sure.
But I also did consult the resident whiskey expert of this podcast, our friend Brian Reynolds.
Of course, yes.
Who is good with words and is good with whiskey. So him and I had a good back and forth on what a Minnesota Wild whiskey would taste like. So this is what I'll first start with. I'll first come up with a couple of things I had for Minnesota Wild whiskey. First idea on what it would taste like is middle of the road whiskey, where you think, there's certainly some good aspects in there. And then there's other aspects in it where you say, what the hell is that? Or I also did fire in the old one-liner of, the Wild can't have a whiskey because they don't have a cup to pour it in.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty easy.
Also put, it's a whiskey where the ingredients had it projecting to be really great, but it just didn't have a good finish.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Reynolds did chime in here. He had a few longer answers than I did. But he put, it sure looks like whiskey, kind of even smells like whiskey. The taste, though, The taste is reminiscent of when you leave a beer out in the sun for 4 days, someone put cigarette butts in it, and then accidentally grab that can instead of your cold beer, take a big swig before you can even realize just how wrong your life has gone at this moment. And even though you knew it was bad and you spit it out right away, it somehow still left you questioning how you could be that stupid and gave you the worst hangover you've ever had.
Wow. That's the brilliance of Brian Reynolds, I guess.
Well, we go on. But it's cool because parts of it were made here, and there's a plan to add some vodka in 2021 to make the taste a little less noticeable. And the distiller keeps telling you how much he really loves whiskey, and he's really excited to make a good whiskey.
Yeah.
World-class whiskey.
Yeah, I think so. When I thought of this, I think the same jokes came to mind as the Skull coffee. And then we talked about the wild Keurig cups, the delicious cups and the dog turd cups. I think that's the same thing with this whole whiskey and wine pairing. I think, like, you know, it's probably a fine whiskey. Like it's a middle of the road drinkable whiskey. Let's call it like a, you know, maybe a Jack Daniels where it's some people like it, some people don't. You know, maybe it mixes well with some things. But instead of a tequila worm, there's just a little dog turd in the bottom. And you have to eat it.
Oof. People who drink said whiskey constantly wonder why they can't make it outside like the Chicago whiskey. It's also from Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then he leaves us with Minnesota first round whiskey because there won't be a second round.
It's a one-time deal, folks. You got to get it while it's hot. We're only making one round of this. Yeah. That's very good.
That was so fun to kind of come up with different whiskey ideas for with Mr. Reynolds because I don't know, it was just something fun that
That's
I
kind of right
yeah.
in your two collective wheelhouses. I feel like.
Yep, exactly. So if you have any good ideas on what a Minnesota Wild whiskey would taste like, just put on our Facebook or our Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. Let us know. We would love to hear your Minnesota Wild whiskey ideas, or even if you have an idea on what Minnesota Wild wine would taste like, let us know.
Oof. Yeah, there's such a cornucopia with wines. I feel like you could go a lot of ways with that.
So, yeah.
When it comes to wines, I'm more like Michael Scott. This is a white.
Yeah.
This is a red.
That's it.
Yep.
So, all right. That's what we got for the little fun segment we had. Moving right along to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more because that, you know, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
The Bruce Boudreau quote of the week comes from Monday because he really didn't have any good quotes, and it was a short week, so we weren't blessed with many.
But we probably missed it on Monday
yeah,
because we were a little busy.
That we were. But he said after the game Monday against the Golden Knights on Marcus Foligno, he's been playing really good lately, but this was a special night for him. Let me tell you, Bruce, would it have killed him to score before the Knights did? Then it truly would have been a special night.
Would have been a special night for Giles. I know that.
Yes.
I was so just to kind of preface this, I don't think we mentioned this on the podcast last week.
I don't know if we did.
Well, I don't think we did.
It was kind of a blur.
You were still upset. So they had prop bets on the Knights and the Wild game because, of course, it's the only game in town. So
love a good prop bet.
Yeah, prop bets are great. So they had first to score a goal in the entire game, right? So you've got your Jonathan Marcia show 8-1. William Karlsson like 9-1, Parise 9-1, Zucker 10-1. That kind of Alex Tuck 10-1. You look to the bottom of the list. You've got Nate Schmidt 35-1. It kind of makes sense. He's a defenseman, you know, doesn't score a lot.
Belmar 50-1.
Yeah, Belmar 50. Marcus Foligno 40-1. So 40-1 odds on Marcus Foligno scoring the first goal of the game. So I put $10 down on Alex Tuck because I'm like, you know what? It just makes way too much sense for Alex Tuck to score. You know, these kind of things tend to haunt Wild fans tend to haunt the team, I'm going to bet on Alex Tuch. I also put $5 on Nate Schmidt because it's 35-1. Why not? And he's a Minnesotan. That's another storyline that also exists. Giles, being the smart bettor that he is, put $5 on Marcus Foligno because, 40-1. You might as well give it a shot, right? You lost a lot more than $5 during your weekend in Vegas, so a $5 bet isn't so bad. Or I should say, you bet more than $5 at various times during your weekend. You ended up ahead, which is nice. But so we're at the game, and we actually sit in separate seats. But Foligno, I believe, whiffs on one.
So early in the game, Marcus Foligno gets the puck on the half wall, and Marc-Andre Fleury was behind the net because he played the puck out around the wall, and Foligno was right there.
Yeah.
So in that time, Foligno gets the puck on his stick, and the net is relatively empty to shoot at, and Fleury's trying to scramble back into the goal, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is it. And then he shoots it. If Fleury hadn't been standing in the net or in the crease, he shoots it wide. But Fleury gloved it and stopped the play because there was a couple other Wild players charging the net.
Right.
And I was like, that was it. That was the shot right there. And he had just messed it up. And then sure enough, a few minutes later, Tuch comes down, goal.
And I was jacked. Like I put $10. I won $100. And I jump up when Tuch scores and start fist pumping like.
Yes, I'm sure you confused the hell out of the people around you.
Because I'm wearing a Wild hat. I'm wearing a North Stars shirt. I've got Wild fans on one side of me and Knights fans on the other. I jump up and drop a couple of expletives and pretty excited about the whole deal because I just won $100. And so it was pretty exciting. And then, of course, the next goal is Marcus Foligno scoring one of his, probably 5 goals a season. He scores it, not the first goal of the game, mind you, but the second goal of the game, first for the Wild. And just as if him missing the net wasn't enough, just the twist of the knife on Giles, he scores the very next goal of the game, and Giles misses out on his $200 payday on a $5 bet. But that's Vegas, baby.
It's okay. I also bet the prop of the team that scores first loses.
Yeah, which worked out.
Under the assumption that Foligno scored first, the Wild would lose.
Worked out in reverse for you, though.
Right. So I was able to get my money back at least.
Yeah.
But, so that's the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. Now we're going to quickly fire on over to our Krill Watch.
Yeah.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots and he scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov. He had another goal as we tweeted out from the Giles and the Goalie podcast Twitter account.
Sure did.
Anytime we see that crop up, we make sure that the people know about it because, he's just about the only hope that the Wild have for a elite scorer at this point. There's not much else. But just to, go on his season here, 21 goals, 13 assists, 34 points in 48 games with CSKA Moscow. Doing all right over there. He is now leading the team in goals with 21.
Yep.
So
and that's a new career high for him, as one of the Russian accounts noted the other day. Previous high 20 goals in a season. Now it's 21. But since the last time we kept track of him, he's played 5 games and 4 points in that span. So pretty solid 2 weeks. We obviously didn't update on it last week in Vegas because we were.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of time to.
We were too busy getting kicked out of bars, and
we only got
not
asked,
kicked out.
We got asked to stop.
We're too busy.
Recording
Yeah, we're too busy getting cease and desist orders.
Yeah.
So 5 games, 4 points, pretty solid. Not having maybe a banner season like you might expect. I think now is around the time where we can start talking about maybe being a little disappointed in his season. 34 points in 48 games, not really what you would kind of hope for. You really kind of would hope for him to tear up the KHL because it is kind of a lower level league. But, again, still he's very young. He's obviously very talented. I haven't dove super deep into what his usage has been and all that kind of stuff, and maybe it's just kind of a byproduct of how that league plays. But I don't know. I'm not worried or anything, but it is kind of eyebrow raising a little bit that he's not really particularly close to that point per game threshold that we would kind of expect him to be at, and a threshold that he's really kind of come close to in the last 2 seasons in the KHL, to be honest.
All right. Ben, is there another prospect you want to highlight?
Sure. So actually, a favorite of this podcast, definitely more so of you, but I would also like to see him as well, had a return to the Iowa Wild this weekend and notched a goal. One Sam Annis was hurt for a little while and now is returned to the Iowa Wild, had a goal in the game, I believe Saturday night. Yeah, goal in the game Saturday night. So on the season as a total, he's played 30 games, which is, I believe they played 40-some on the whole. So he missed, about a month worth of action. 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points. And we brought him up very briefly last week on the show, talking about how he should get a shot. We'd like to see them kind of just, flesh out what they have with him and kind of just see what you got. I mean, kind of revolving around the whole Justin Kluse trade where he was let go because they weren't going to use him anytime soon anyway. So, but Sam Annis, I feel like, has been someone that, look at last year in Iowa. He played 70 games, 61 points, 26 goals in the AHL. I mean, yes, that's the AHL. And no, I don't expect him to do that in the NHL. But, my point would be, I got to think he brings more to this team than a guy like Matt Hendricks or a guy like even JT Brown. Or, he's got the ability to play center. He's probably better defensively than Victor Rask, sadly. Christ, he might even be better off offensively than Joel Eriksson Ek. I mean, that's kind of how low the bar has swung on Eriksson Ek, unfortunately. So, I don't know. I know that's probably echoes your thoughts on Sam Annis, but I just wanted to talk about him briefly because he is back now. He is healthy, and I really do want to see him get some time in St. Paul. He has never, ever been called up with the Minnesota Wild. He's never played a game. So I really do want to see that before Paul Fenton just kind of casts him aside, a la Justin Kluse. I would like to see him maybe spend a little bit of time in St. Paul and see if he can stick.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've really hashed out our Sam Annis thoughts on this podcast before, so we won't really get too much more into it. But that's that. Now we can fire over into the Central Intelligence Report.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
Central Intelligence, Winnipeg Jets, as mentioned before, tied with Nashville Predators, 64 points, although the Jets have 4 games less played than the Predators at the break.
Wow.
So obviously they have the upper hand. But going into the All-Star break, Jets 7 out of 10. Winners of 7 of the last 10. Nashville won 2 in a row going into the break. Wild at third, 55 points. Won 3 games in a row to go into their break, forgetting the win against Columbus on Saturday before Wednesday's wins over Vegas, Colorado. Then you got the Dallas Stars, who are tied with the Colorado Avalanche, 52 points. And they are also holders of the last wild card spots in the West, I should say, both 1 and 2. But the Stars, 49 games played, Avs at 50 games played, and then also the Vancouver Canucks are tied with them for that wild card spot at 52 points. But neither of those teams playing overly well right now. Dallas losers of 4-6, Colorado losers of, I think it's now 12 out of 15 after their loss against the Wild on Wednesday night. And then you've got St. Louis, who is just creeping their way, into the playoff picture. They're at 49 points. I don't know how, but they are. And then Chicago Blackhawks, 45 points. They're a lot closer to the playoff spot than what they should be, but that's also because none of those teams, Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, Anaheim, really are playing overly great. So there you go. That is Central Intelligence. And then last, not least, we hit on jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
So, jerseys of the week. Back, if you're listening via our podcast, you can also find this in video format on our YouTube channel.
Hi.
As we are rocking the West and East jerseys of the 2004 All-Star Game, which we're probably going to talk about in ever so short amount of time here. But since it was the All-Star Game over the weekend here, we're going to talk a little bit about All-Star Game jerseys and probably some of our best and worst of the event. And I think since we're wearing them and it was here, we can both universally agree that the 2004 All-Star Game featuring the green Western jerseys and the kind of cream with red Eastern Conference jerseys were ones that really stand out, and one of just two jersey sets that were really designed after the host team.
Yeah.
With the other being 2009 in Montreal for their centennial, although a lot was going on with those jerseys, but they were still Canadians' colors. It's not really been an NHL thing to model jersey colors after the host team, although they also did, in 2017 in Los Angeles.
Well, and so when they've gone to this 4-team format, they have sort of used the host team's colors. It's just been the colors, though. I mean, yeah, we're looking at Los Angeles now. They have black, they have the purple, forum blue, whatever. They have yellow, and they have white, and there's a lot of silver there. So you can say they use those colors, and that's all well and good. Same thing, with Tampa in 2018, blue and silver and black and white. Those are Tampa-based colors, so they use their colors, and that's fine, and that's all well and good. But the thing that I liked about these jerseys that we're wearing, the Wild, All-Star jerseys, they're actually modeled after the team. Like, they actually look like they came from this team. Like, it wasn't just some generic green jerseys, some generic red jerseys, et cetera. It was actually something that looked like, oh, this looks like a jersey that the Wild might wear. And that was kind of the nice thing about it.
And the green, the Western jerseys kind of modeled or set the template for their 2009 through 17 alternates with the Minnesota script up the front.
Yep.
And those really stand out to me as some of the best. I'm probably biased, but although looking at the jersey history, those are some of the best.
I did like the Campbell and Wales diagonal jerseys as well. Those I thought were a good look that they wore in the 80s.
Yes.
I really did like that. 84-86. Yep, Campbell and Wales. Great jerseys. We both are probably a little bit partial to the star jerseys, North America versus the world kind of when that whole thing first cropped up. Those were kind of nice too. The stars ended up bastardizing them for their own purposes. But it was still kind of a cool design. I mean, it was very 90s. We're looking at them right now.
I just realized that. I had never realized that before. Mind wrecked. The stars bastardized those jerseys.
Oh, yeah, the stars stole. They very blatantly stole those. But, those were kind of fun. The Campbell and Wales were kind of fun. From there, they've just been kind of, I don't know, there's been some weird stuff they've tried that hasn't really worked that we're kind of scrolling through right now. But the thing, going back to these jerseys and what they didn't do otherwise, I just would like to see them do that. Why not go a little more personalized for the city that's hosting? The NBA does it a little bit. Major League Baseball doesn't do it because they wear their jerseys during the game, but
the home run derby
jerseys are usually fantastic. Like they look really good, and I would really like to see something like that happen in hockey. And like I said, that you could kind of even make the argument they did it for Montreal, even though those jerseys were a little weird. But the Wild, that's the only time they've ever done that. And I don't know, once you see that, I don't know why you would go away from it. Like, it had to be an incredible sale. I mean, I think I've seen, granted we live in this market, but I got to think sales-wise, it did a lot better. Yeah, I mean, with a personalized local jersey, like, I'm a big, let's say I'm a big Ray Bork fan, and he comes to play in the All-Star game here. I don't know why you wouldn't want that, and especially in a hometown that you're in, you can wear your own hometown's jersey. Let's say you have a Paul Kariya Western Conference All-Star jersey. Why wouldn't you want to wear that? Why wouldn't you want to have that in your closet?
Well, it would, but he didn't make the game that year, sadly.
Well, yeah, that was towards the tail end of his career.
That was after the Ducks had
right.
very much unkindly cut him. But I agree, and this year's jerseys, 2019, the black and white, the parlay jerseys, which I get what they're doing with the recycled, product and stuff. That's great, but just the black and white to it comes off as very NBA-ish because the NBA did a black and white jersey last year, and they're doing it again this year with just some red and blue trim to it.
Yep.
So I don't like that the NHL is trying to copy the NBA in that area.
No.
There's 15 different other things the NHL could copy from the NBA. This is not one of them.
One of the only things that they don't have to copy them.
Like, there's a little bit of teal under the collar, which is obviously tailor-made for San Jose, but it's just like, you don't get to host the All-Star game every day. Like, quit with these generic jerseys that you're coming out with. Let the host team kind of take their colors, incorporate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure the Sharks would have done a great job of trying to incorporate their colors into the jerseys. How unfair to, what was it? Columbus. 2015
God.
Columbus. They had the
lime green,
neon green and black. Woof.
Yeah.
The Nashville Predators, they sort of had their yellow incorporated, but it comes off as more of a gold. And it was black, silver, or not, gray, white, and it just, there's so much going on. The John Scott game.
Yeah.
That's so bad. They incorporated Nashville on the pants with the 3 stars.
Yeah.
Like, why? It's so maddening how terrible the NHL has kind of gone with their jerseys. Although I will say this year's jerseys, they had a little more plainness to them, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say plain in like a bad way, but
simple.
They're simple, which I like what they had going. It needed color.
Yeah.
And I think it was Chris Creamer of Sports Logos. He dropped a little bit of color in the crest of each team.
Yeah.
And they looked great.
Yeah.
So that's disappointing. And then also just to kind of sum up, other All-Star jerseys that I particularly liked. I like the 1992, kind of the 75th anniversary of the NHL. I was kind of surprised they didn't go back to that in their 100th anniversary season.
Yeah.
Because they love to take that stuff out. But yeah, like pretty much like all through the 80s, the NHL had really good all-star jerseys.
Except for the ones with all the stars.
Right. I think it was what, 82? Yeah, 82. It looks like,
Stars.
That looks like a hull of a ship with just all the bolts in it. Like that looks awful. But yeah, the orange and black I actually thought was a pretty decent look for the NHL when they did that from mid 70s on. So that's kind of how I feel about all-star jerseys past and present. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, I did. Not being a fan of the All-Star game kind of tempers my love for the jerseys. But I still think that they can be kind of a cool thing. I still think that it can be something that you remember. Like, I do remember watching All-Star games as a kid and being like, oh, this is a lot of fun. Like, this is, there's not any defense played or any hitting or a whole lot of, super intricate play, but it still is a lot of fun. And I don't understand why they find the most generic templates possible for the All-Star game. Like, it's literally NHL 19 create a player jerseys that they use for the NHL All-Star game every year. This year being the exception, even though the jersey templates themselves were absurdly simple and they just threw a black and white logo on it. kind of the same thing, even though they were personalized for each team.
Right.
It still was very, very generic. And I'm just like, you don't have to go wild and, star vomit all over the jerseys like 1982, but at least give us something, like something fun, something that, I wouldn't mind. I don't hate San Jose. I wouldn't mind if they had, a little bit of teal on there or something with the shark on there, just to kind of tie everything together. Like, you will see these jerseys, you have no clue where the teams are at.
Next year, the game is in St. Louis, the 2020 All-Star Game. I can only imagine what kind of generic jersey we'll get for that. But, you've got the Blues who have a good blue and yellow color scheme. So there's something to work there with if you so chose, NHL. But, I digress. So that can do it for our jersey segment. If you listened through this, again, check it out on our YouTube channel. If you did watch on our YouTube channel, thank you very much. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button for all of our great video content. And then that can wrap it up for this otherwise fine podcast. You can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. Podcast has a Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. You can again find us on Facebook. Search facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast. If you listen on iTunes, please go ahead and subscribe and leave us a rating, good or bad. We laugh either way.
Yes.
And then Libsyn, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, we're on all those lovely channels as well. Ben and I write for a website called Zone Coverage, zonecoverage.com/wild. Or if you are a Minnesota sports fan, go ahead, zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Use promo code GATG20. Get you a lovely $20 year subscription to access all of our wonderful content across the channel. So that will do it for us this week. Ben and I will be back next Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday.
Ooh.
Lord knows what kind of mood I'll be in. But that will wrap it up for us, and we will catch you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.